She was only 23, but she carried the weight of two wars on her back, the war that tore apart her homeland and the one she didn't even know she'd face on American soil. Her name was Iryna Zarutska. She fled Kyiv in 2022, her mom clutching her younger siblings as they crossed borders with nothing but bags and fear. They landed in Charlotte, North Carolina, hoping this country would be the safe haven Ukraine could no longer be. Iryna didn't waste time. She hustled. First at an assisted living home, caring for the elderly with the patience of someone twice her age. Then she picked up shifts as a line cook at Zeppety's Pizzeria, sweating over ovens while studying English at the community college. She had dreams, a veterinary assistant badge, her first car, a license in her wallet. The kind of dreams immigrants cling to when they believe America still rewards hard work. She was learning to drive, putting away money dollar by dollar. She painted in her free hours, brushes and canvases filling the corners of her small apartment. She was the glue of her family, her uncle said, the heart of gold holding them together after war ripped them apart. Her boyfriend, Stanislav Stas Nikolitsia, just 21, was by her side every step, helping her adjust, helping her believe that the American dream could be real. But that dream was fragile. She had no way of knowing how quickly it could shatter. Because on one quiet August night after another long shift, Iryna would send her boyfriend one final text. Words so simple, so ordinary, they now cut deeper than a knife. I'll be home soon. Would she ever make it home? No. And that's where the story turns into tragedy. Charlotte was starting to feel like home for Iryna. She worked hard, built friendships at the pizzeria, and carried herself with a quiet determination that drew people in. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, she was steady. The kind of young woman who said yes to every extra shift, who studied until midnight, who called her mom back in Ukraine every morning just to remind her that they were still connected, even across an ocean. Her boyfriend Stas knew the grind better than anyone. They shared a small apartment, balancing rent and bills, leaning on each other through late nights and early mornings. To him, she wasn't just a survivor. She was the reason he believed in the future. They talked about marriage, about kids someday, about the little life they were building from scratch. That night, August 22nd, she was tired but happy. Another day of progress, another day closer to her dream. She boarded the light rail train to head home. The city lights blurred past as she texted Stas. Just 5 words, no hint of fear, no warning that her life was about to be stolen. I'll be home soon. That message hit his phone at 9:47 p.m. He didn't think twice. He smiled, maybe typed back something about dinner or their plans for the weekend. He waited for her key to rattle in the lock, but it never did. Hours later, his world was torn apart by a call no one ever wants to get. The American dream she fought for was gone, and all he had left was that last text, glowing on a cracked phone screen like a goodbye she never meant to send. The news spread fast, faster than Stas could process. He rushed to confirm what his heart already feared. Iryna had been attacked, stabbed on that train in what police later called a random act of violence. No fight, no provocation. Just a young woman trying to get home, her life ripped away in seconds. Stas went silent for hours before finally breaking down online. On Instagram, he posted a photo of them together. He didn't bother with long paragraphs. Just a broken heart emoji and a message aimed straight at the system that failed them. He called out the judge, Teresa Stokes, the very magistrate who had released the man accused of killing Iryna on nothing more than a promise, despite his long criminal history. The pain in his words was raw. His girlfriend was gone. His future was gone. And all because someone in power decided to gamble with public safety. His grief wasn't just personal. It was a warning shot, a cry for justice. If this could happen to Iryna, it could happen to anyone. Meanwhile, her family crumbled under the weight of the loss. Her mother and father, stuck in Ukraine, couldn't even fly to the funeral. Instead, they sat before a phone, watching through a shaky FaceTime call as their daughter's coffin was lowered. Tears blurred the screen as they whispered prayers oceans away. They had once begged her to leave Kyiv for safety. Now they were left wondering if America had betrayed that promise. Charlotte buried Iryna as one of their own. Friends, co-workers, even the elderly residents she once cared for filled the pews. Over 100 from her job came, buses arranged so no one would miss saying goodbye. For them, she wasn't just another immigrant girl. She was the face of hope, a hope now stolen. The attack itself was as senseless as it was sudden. The suspect was a man named Decarlos Brown Jr., 34 years old, sitting just a few seats away from Iryna on that light rail train. He didn't know her. He had no connection to her life, no reason to even speak to her. But he carried with him something far darker, a history of crime that should have kept him off the streets. 14 prior arrests, 14 chances for the justice system to do its job, assaults, thefts, and disorderly conduct, each one another red flag, another warning that this man was dangerous. Yet time after time he walked out free, and the final decision came from Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes, who released him on a no-cash promise, despite his violent past. It was a decision that cost Iryna her life. As the train rolled forward, Brown stood, pulled a knife, and lunged. No argument, no words, just cold violence. Panic filled the car, but passengers froze, paralyzed by fear, unable to move. Some pulled out phones, some turned away, but no one stepped in. In less than a minute, it was over. Iryna lay dying, and Brown fled the train, leaving chaos in his wake. Police caught him hours later, but the damage was done. The surveillance video made it clear this wasn't an accident, this wasn't self-defense. It was murder, and it was preventable, because the man who took Iryna's life should never have been free to begin with. What came out next shook the city even harder. In a recorded jailhouse call, Brown openly admitted what he had done. Speaking to his sister, he described the stabbing with no remorse, no hesitation. He knew exactly what he'd done on that train. And yet, here was a man who'd been handed freedom time and time again by a system that treats criminals better than victims. For Iryna's family, it was like salt in a wound that would never close. They were forced to listen as the man who ended her life casually spoke about it, as if it were nothing more than a passing moment. And while he sat in a cell, they sat in their grief, their questions unanswered. How could this happen in a country built on law and order? But the failures didn't stop there. The night of the attack, witnesses on the train didn't intervene. They didn't rush to pull Brown away, didn't shield Iryna, didn't even shout for help until it was over. Some just stood frozen. Others pulled out phones. The footage tells the story. A young woman alone, surrounded by people who did nothing as her life slipped away. This wasn't just one man's crime. It was a mirror held up to a broken system and a broken culture of fear. A culture where law-abiding citizens are left powerless while repeat offenders roam free. Iryna's uncle said it best at her funeral. She had a heart of gold. She was the family's glue. And now that glue is gone, because the justice system valued second chances for a career criminal over the first chance of a hard-working immigrant chasing the dream. As the shock turned into outrage, the focus shifted to the people who enabled this tragedy. All eyes landed on Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes, the one who let Brown walk free with nothing more than a no-cash promise. 14 arrests on his record, and yet she treated him like a man who just needed another chance. That decision cost a young woman her life. Stas, Iryna's boyfriend, didn't hold back. On Instagram, he blasted Stokes by name, calling her unqualified and demanding to know why someone so dangerous was ever released. His grief turned into fury, and his words struck a chord. Thousands of comments poured in, echoing the same question. How many more Irynas have to die before judges face consequences? Republican leaders in North Carolina quickly stepped in, pointing out what Democrats refused to admit. This is what happens when soft-on-crime policies replace common sense. Bail reform, leniency, revolving doors for violent offenders. It's a pattern, and Iryna paid the ultimate price. Conservatives argued that tougher sentencing, stricter bail rules, and accountability for repeat offenders are the only way to stop tragedies like this. But the other side stayed quiet. Democrats in Charlotte dodged questions, some even downplaying the failures. The silence was deafening for Iryna's family, who wanted answers, not excuses. Her uncle said what many were thinking. His niece embodied the American dream, but America's justice system betrayed her. Every life lost to crime is one too many. But this wasn't just crime. This was preventable, and the people in power who failed to act have blood on their hands. As investigators pieced the case together, the failures became impossible to ignore. This wasn't an isolated mistake. It was the direct result of policies that put criminals ahead of communities. And it wasn't just Republicans saying it. Ordinary people in Charlotte, neighbors, co-workers, even the elderly residents Iryna once cared for, they all asked the same thing. Why was he free? The truth is brutal. Decarlos Brown Jr. wasn't some first-time offender who slipped through the cracks. He was the textbook definition of a repeat offender. 14 arrests, and not one of them was enough to keep him behind bars. Each release emboldened him. Each light sentence reinforced the idea that the system would never hold him accountable. And he was right, until the day he killed. Democrats have sold bail reform as compassion, but compassion for who? For the violent criminal who laughed about his crime in a jailhouse call? For the man who robbed a young immigrant of her life? Republicans in North Carolina aren't buying it. They're calling for sweeping changes, mandatory minimums for violent offenders, cash bail reinstated, and judges held to account when their reckless decisions cost lives. And the public is responding. Candlelight vigils turned into rallies, people demanding action, holding signs with Iryna's name written in bold black letters. They weren't just mourning, they were angry. Angry at a system that failed them, angry at leaders who let ideology blind them to reality. Because here's the truth no one can escape. Iryna should be alive today. And the reason she's not goes far beyond one man with a knife. It points straight back to a political machine that puts lives at risk. The weight of the story didn't stop in Charlotte. It exploded nationwide. Conservative outlets covered it wall to wall, framing Iryna's death as a symbol of what happens when public safety takes a backseat to politics. Republican leaders went on record slamming Democrat complacency on crime. They didn't mince words. This wasn't an accident. It was the consequence of failed policies. Meanwhile, new details kept surfacing. Fundraisers popped up online trying to raise money for Brown's legal defense, but the public wasn't having it. Outrage poured in, and GoFundMe yanked them down. No one wanted to bankroll a killer. The contrast was striking. A young woman chasing the American dream versus a repeat offender shielded by leniency until he finally crossed a line no one could ignore. And then came a moment of justice at the highest level. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the federal government was reviewing the case, and she made it clear the death penalty was on the table. Her words sent shockwaves, finally offering a glimpse of accountability that had been absent for too long. Even Elon Musk weighed in, pledging $1 million to fund murals in Iryna's honor. He called her a symbol of perseverance and talent, reminding America that this wasn't just a victim. This was an artist, a student, a daughter with her whole future ahead. The funeral made that clear. Over 100 co-workers and friends filled the church, with buses arranged to bring the elderly residents she once served. They came to honor the girl who worked double shifts, learned English by flashlight, and never stopped believing in tomorrow. They came to say goodbye to someone who should never have been taken from them. For Iryna's family, the loss was unbearable. Her parents in Ukraine wept through a phone screen, watching their daughter's funeral on FaceTime. They had begged her to leave Kiev for safety, only to see her buried in a country that promised protection but delivered betrayal. Yet they made one thing clear: she would not be flown back to Ukraine. America was her home now. She worked, studied, and dreamed here. This was where her story ended and where justice must begin. Her uncle, who first took the family in when they arrived, stood before mourners and said the words that silenced the room. She was our glue. She kept us together. She had a heart of gold, and now that heart is gone. He didn't stop there. He pointed a finger directly at the system that let Brown roam free, saying what every immigrant family fears but rarely dares to admit. We came here to chase the dream, but the dream died because of failed justice. It wasn't just grief. It was a demand for safer transit, for stricter sentencing, for leaders who care more about protecting families than protecting criminals. Republicans echoed his call, pushing legislation that would toughen penalties for violent offenders and hold judges accountable for reckless releases. Democrats once again stayed quiet. The silence is telling. When innocent lives are lost and leaders dodge responsibility, trust in the system dies too. And that's the real wound, because if America can't protect those who come here in hope, then what is left of the American promise? Iryna Zarutska's story is more than a headline. It's a test for America. She was 23 years old, an immigrant who worked 2 jobs, studied at night, saved for her first car, and painted beauty onto every canvas she touched. She did everything right. She carried herself with grit and grace, embodying the promise that if you work hard, you can build a future here. And yet, her life was stolen, not just by one man, but by a justice system that refuses to protect its people. Her last words to her boyfriend, "I'll be home soon," now stand as a haunting reminder. She believed she would make it back that night. She trusted that the country she had given her all to would be safe enough to get her there. That trust was broken. But her death is sparking a movement. Republicans are demanding accountability, tougher laws, and real justice for victims. Leaders like Pam Bondi are signaling that the death penalty is not off the table. And across America, people are waking up to the truth. Safety is not partisan. It's a basic right, one that cannot be compromised for ideology or political convenience. Elon Musk's pledge for murals in her honor is just one sign that her legacy will not fade. Those murals will tell her story, the refugee who became a worker, a student, an artist, and a dreamer. They'll stand as a challenge to every leader in this country. Protect people like Iryna, or step aside for those who will. Because in the end, her life deserves more than grief. It deserves change. And if America is to remain the land of opportunity, then Iryna's last message must be the spark that forces this nation to choose justice over excuses.